Valeria is one of the most beloved characters from the entire Conan lore, and people just love her for who she is. The best friend of hardship and misery, yet the embodiment of all things brave and beautiful. From her appearance in Robert E. Howard's Red Nails to her portrayal in Conan the Barbarian from 1982, Valeria has shown us how great women can be in a sword and sorcery setting. And in this video, we're going to explore everything there is to explore about this magnificent and brave woman. We'll explore her origins from stories like The Savage Sword of Conan, Age of Conan, Red Nails, and more. But before we begin, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Those small clicks from you help us in marvelous ways to keep bringing you this marvelous content. And now, let's get right into it. Her grimdark story had its beginning in The Savage Sword of Conan, number 225. Valeria's tragic journey began the day she escaped her uncle Clesus and avoided a forced marriage to Dom Dolaris. In Zingara, a Cordova merchant discovered her during her first real attempt at theft. Instead of stealing a chest of treasure, she dropped it into the water. Curious, the merchant asked her why she did that. Valeria then recounted her sorrowful past. She described her first heist as stealing her mother's life by being born, a dark way to express her mother's death. Her father, Lord Daki, a respected merchant prince, didn't blame her. He named her Marina in honor of her late mother. When Val turned 7, her father embarked on a mission to mediate between Tehran and Coruscant, a city across the Vilayat Sea. This voyage marked the first major turning point in Valeria's life. Tragedy struck when a Turanian captain killed her father for associating with Kirkos of the Red Brotherhood, who was actually Val's uncle, Brandis. Brandis took Val under his wing and renamed her Valeria. He introduced her to his pirate crew and trained her in swordplay. Valeria thrived in the pirate life, enjoying the freedom and adventure it offered. However, Brandis eventually decided that Valeria should leave the pirate life. She was devastated by this decision as she loved her life at sea, and during her time with the pirates, she met Red Sonja and Zora, who taught her archery. Valeria showed a natural talent for the skill, further proving her worth to the crew. At 9 years old, Brandis sent her to Aquilonia with a fortune to live with her maternal uncle Clesus. This decision placed Valeria at another critical crossroads in her life. Uncle Clesus accepted Valeria not out of affection, but for the money she brought. Unfortunately, he was poor with finances. He squandered Valeria's inheritance on merchant ships in Cordova, which were soon wrecked by Barachen pirates. Desperate to make money, Clesus decided to trade Valeria to Dom Dolaris, the richest man in the city, in exchange for a chest full of treasure. The night before her planned marriage to Dom Dolaris, Valeria learned that her price had arrived. Determined to escape, she snuck onto the ship and threw the jewels into the water, hoping to nullify the deal her uncle had made. Valeria was caught, but the man explained that Dom Dolaris would still proceed with the marriage because he was set to lose the gems anyway. Clesus would consider the arrangement a success if Valeria left. Realizing she was still bound to marry Dom Dolaris, Valeria asked the man to join her crew instead. After some persuasion, he agreed. To blend in, she cut her hair and dressed in men's clothes, as women weren't permitted on such ships. Shortly after, the ship was hijacked by the Red Brotherhood. It was during this hijacking that Valeria met a certain long-haired barbarian, which was the beginning of the next chapter in her adventurous life. It's safe to say that Valeria's life was plagued with constant struggles of human life and shifts in allegiance. However, from her early days of escaping an unwanted marriage to her time with pirates and her eventual confrontation with her uncle's schemes, she showed resilience and resourcefulness. Her training in swordplay and archery made her a true legend in her world, and she was respected by allies and feared by her enemies. Now, like many characters, Valeria also had an alternate origin story as described in the 5-issue comic book titled Age of Conan, Valeria. Let's explore that before jumping into her movie appearances. Oh, and we'll also check out how the source material's Valeria is different from her cinematic version. Age of Conan, Valeria. In the Age of Conan comics, Valeria continues to be a fierce warrior, but this time her story begins as a child of war. Born amidst the ceaseless battles between Aquilonia and Numidia, her life was shaped by bloodshed. Aquilonia was hailed as the greatest military power in the Western world, but it gave Valeria nothing but fragile connections, an empty heart, and eyes brimming with unshed tears. At the age of just 9, her life was shattered when Zingarian pirates raided her village. Her father, a merchant more than a fighter, tried to protect his family but was slain. Her mother hid her beneath the floorboards and begged her to stay silent. Valeria cowered in fear, listening as her mother's screams faded into silence, leaving her drenched in grief and terror. Orphaned, Valeria was taken in by her older brother, Cassian. A member of the Kingsguard, Cassian was a figure of strength and honor. Valeria idolized him and wanted nothing more than to be brave and fearless like him, but tragedy seemed to follow her like a shadow. One day, after having a sword forged by the town blacksmith, Cassian returned home to find that Valeria had run off again. She'd only gone after some stray kittens, but his frustration boiled over. Complaining to his friend and fellow guard Antonius, he voiced his exasperation over constantly having to watch over her. Unbeknownst to him, Valeria overheard every word. Her heart broke at the realization that her presence felt like a burden to the one person she relied on the most. Antonius, however, took it upon himself to find Valeria. When he did, he assured her that Cassian didn't hate her. On the contrary, she was his only family, and he needed her more than she knew. This moment of comfort was short-lived. Soon after, Valeria witnessed a hooded figure attacking Cassian. She rushed to her brother's side as he lay dying, but the only clue he left her was his final words: "Find Antonius." Her grief deepened when she discovered that the sword used to kill her brother belonged to Antonius. Trust, Valeria learned, was a path that led only to betrayal. The loss of her family and childhood hardened her. She swore that she would never endure such pain again. Years passed and Valeria honed her skills and dedicated herself to tracking down her brother's killer. Her journey eventually brought her back to Tarantia, the place where it all began. Seeking answers, she visited Lorenz, the blacksmith who had forged Cassian's sword. Instead, she encountered his son, who mistook her for a threat and attacked her. After she clarified her purpose, the young man told her to return the next day as Lorenz was unavailable. That night, in her lodging, a hooded figure confronted her. He demanded to know how she had come into possession of a Mitran knight's sword, accusing her of being unworthy, just a girl. The confrontation was abrupt, tense, and left more questions than answered. This was the end of the first issue, leaving Valeria's story shrouded in mystery. Oh, and for those unfamiliar with the lore, Mitra was one of the major gods of the Hyborian Age, and the mention of his knights hinted at deeper layers of intrigue. Valeria's late-night attacker turned out to be Lorenz himself. She wondered why he couldn't wait until morning when their meeting was already set. Sneaking up on her in the dead of night seemed unnecessary, but Valeria quickly subdued him, and she bound the blacksmith without much effort. Needless to say, she demanded answers, and without putting in a lot of defense or effort, Lorenz revealed his fears. When she arrived carrying the sword of a Mitran knight and asking questions, he assumed she was sent to kill him. His family had forged swords for the Mitran knights for generations, but the knights had started vanishing. Those connected to them, those who might know their secrets, were also being hunted. His family had been threatened twice already. Valeria's sudden appearance only added to his suspicions. Valeria pleaded for his help in identifying the sword's original owner. Lorenz explained that every blade bore a unique mark tied to its knight, and the records were kept at a monastery a few miles away. He offered to accompany her, but warned her of the dangers on the road, which had been worsened by the king's distraction with the Nemedia War. Valeria refused. She preferred to rely on herself, confident in her ability to handle any threat. With her destination set, she left for the monastery. Her words to Lorenz had not been entirely truthful. She wanted to find the sword's owner, yes, but not to save him. Her goal was to avenge Cassian. She believed Antonius was the killer and had no plans for mercy, yet doubts lingered. Was Antonius truly the culprit? On her journey, 3 barbarians ambushed her. Their intentions were vile, of course, and Valeria fought fiercely, killing them, but not without cost. She was gravely wounded, her body bleeding and battered. In her moment of struggle, a memory surfaced. Antonius had once trained her in swordsmanship, something Cassian always found odd. Antonius had told her she might never match a man's strength, but she could outsmart him. That lesson saved her life. Exhausted and barely standing, Valeria reached the monastery. She knocked weakly on the heavy doors before collapsing, and a Mitran monk opened the door to find her lying unconscious at his feet. Her quest, far from over, now hung by a thread. That was the second issue, and now we move on to the third. A week passed in the monastery of Mitra. Valeria's fever had only just broken, but her wounds were far from healed. Weak and unsteady, she refused to rest. Father Romano brought her food and urged her to recover, but she insisted on staying active. When he refused her request to practice, she settled for a book on Mitran history, which he promised to deliver with her meal. Romano urged patience, telling her to trust Mitra's plan. Valeria doubted the god of peace and forgiveness had any role in her quest for vengeance. She couldn't wait. Antonius was close, and she intended to find him. The temple's endless prayers made it easy to avoid detection, though she didn't know its layout. Her body betrayed her resolve, and just as Romano had warned, she collapsed. Before unconsciousness claimed her, she glimpsed a man who looked like Antonius. Later, while Romano tended her, the king's men attacked the monastery and accused the priests of harboring a traitor. Flames engulfed the sanctuary. The fire awakened old memories. Death surrounded her again, just as it had in her childhood. Blood never disturbed her, but the fire did. The sight and smell clawed at her mind. Dragging her back to the night pirates raised her village. In the fleeing monks and burning bodies, she saw her neighbors, her parents. Why would anyone attack a place of peace? She swore to stop it. If a battle awaited, she was ready. Through the chaos, her gaze locked on Antonius, standing with Romano. At the moment, the flames and screams seemed to fade, but another ghost from her past emerged. Leading the assault was Blasius, a military officer and former visitor to her home when Cassian was still alive. Blasius gave Romano an ultimatum: surrender the traitor within 24 hours or face destruction. When the fire settled and the attackers withdrew, Valeria resolved to act. Her path was clear. She went to confront confront Antonius, the man who had once been her teacher, who now stood at the center of the storm, surrounded by questions that only he could answer. Though Valeria came to kill Antonius, she hesitated. Instead of executing her plan, she spoke to him as if it were the old days. She wanted answers about Cassian's death, but felt the truth was buried deeper. Antonius revealed little, and Valeria realized she needed another path. Only one man remained who knew Cassian: Blasius. Antonius even admitted that there was enmity between them. Blasius believed Antonius a traitor, but could their feud have led to her brother's death? Possibility lingered. Determined, Valeria infiltrated Blasius's keep and cornered him in his chambers. Knife in hand, she demanded the truth about her brother. Blasius, surprised to see her, entertained her questions. He first asked her how she had learned about the traitor in the monastery. When she recounted her ordeal, he began his tale. The Mitran Knights, he explained, had long committed heresies and schemed to undermine the king, seeking to control Aquilonia from the shadows. Cassian, Blasius continued, had always wanted a kingdom. Even as a young man, his bravery and skill earned the king's notice. Cassian was knighted and chosen to train with the royal bodyguards, but the Mitran Knights also saw his potential. They approached Cassian and offered him a role in their hidden agenda. At first, he was thrilled. Blasius claimed to have opened Cassian's eyes to their true intentions. Working against the king horrified him, but Cassian agreed to stay among the Mitrans to expose their schemes. Cassian uncovered a plot to assassinate the ambassador of Zamora. He tried to stop it, but his actions cost him his life. Blasius implied Antonius had killed him, though Valeria still harbored doubts. Blasius proposed a deal. If she wanted justice for her brother, she would have to kill Antonius herself. That night, Valeria crept into Antonius's chamber with her sword drawn. Her heart burned with the need for vengeance. If Antonius had betrayed Cassian, he would pay with his life, but as she approached, the weight of everything she had learned hung heavy. The truth of her brother's death was within reach. All she had to do was strike. Valeria stood over Antonius, sword in hand, ready to strike, but as she brought the sword down, she stopped and flung the blade away. She couldn't kill him. Antonius, ever watchful, had laid a trap for anyone who tried to take his life. He reassured her that he would never harm Cassian. Valeria didn't want his reassurances, though. Her anger blinded her to his pleas. Yet Antonius, filled with guilt for failing to prevent Cassian's death, offered himself to her, asking her to finish it. His actions gave Valeria pause. Doubts crept in. She decided to hear his side of the story before making her final decision. Antonius spoke of Cassian, describing the man she hadn't known before she came to live with him. He spoke of a brother who loved attention, who craved the best things in life, and who wanted to provide a good life for her. Cassian, a tailor's son, had managed to own a villa, horses, and servants. Antonius pointed out that such wealth wasn't possible on the salary of a king's guard. Cassian, Antonius revealed, had been taking bribes from Numidia. He had orchestrated accidents, assassinations, and trade wars, all to weaken Aquilonia's standing while strengthening Numidia's alliances. When Antonius discovered the truth, he confronted Cassian. Torn between the shame of his actions and the honor of a king's guard, Cassian chose death. He unsheathed Antonius' sword and killed himself. The revelation hit Valeria hard. Antonius, falsely branded a traitor, had escaped execution by the Aquilonian guards. His guilt, however, never left him. Valeria struggled with the weight of the truth. Her brother, whom she had idolized, had betrayed the very ideals she thought he upheld. Yet his choices no longer defined her path. Though the truth shattered her, Valeria made her peace with it. She left her quest for vengeance behind and focused on a new purpose. Her life became one of protection, dedicated to those who couldn't defend themselves. The fire of revenge in her heart burned out, replaced by resolve to stand for justice and honor, even when others failed to do so. Valeria's arc in red nails. Valeria of the Red Brotherhood paused at twilight near a jungle pool. She let her horse rest and climbed a crag to see beyond the dense canopy. Near the top, she passed a skeleton lying on a rocky outcropping. From the summit, she spotted a walled city a mile to the south. As she descended, a familiar voice startled her. Conan stood at the base of the rocks, having followed her from Sukhmet after she killed a Stygian officer and fled his advances. He urged her to head for the coast, but she refused. Their standoff broke when the sound of their horses being slaughtered echoed through the trees. They raced back to the pool and found an elephant-sized reptilian monster with a scorpion-like tail. The beast charged, forcing them up the rocks. Trapped, they realized the skeleton had met the same fate. The creature, which Conan called a dragon, waited below. With no food except for the poisonous apples of Derketa, they devised a plan. Valeria pointed out the walled city, and Conan fashioned a spear using vines in his sword. He coated the blade with the apple's juice and lured the dragon into striking distance. He stabbed deep into its throat, and the poison monster staggered to the pool to drink, giving them time to escape toward the city. Their relief was short-lived. The The poisoned and enraged beast tracked them by scent. As it closed in, Conan shoved Valeria aside and lunged at it. His sword struck deep, but the dragon sent him flying. The beast crashed into a tree and fell still. Exhausted, they left the jungle and saw the city looming in the distance. Strange, there were no fields or herds to sustain it. Reaching the city, they found its gates rusted shut and the streets silent. Conan forced the doors open, revealing a jade-lined passage. Dust and webs coated everything, yet the air felt alive. Friezes on the wall showed long-dead Easterners. Empty chambers and eerie corridors stretched endlessly. Conan explored an ivory staircase while Valeria rested. A noise drew her attention. Hiding behind a column, she saw a scimitar-wielding man, trembling with fear, creep past. He entered a chamber and she heard a choked cry. Investigating, she found him dead in a pool of blood. Moments later, another man arrived and bent over the corpse. A glowing spectral skull appeared, paralyzing him with terror. As it descended, revealing a hazy figure inside, Valeria acted. She slashed the figure, killing the man behind the illusion. The terrified survivor, Tecotl, begged her to flee to his clan's encampment, warning her not to touch the glowing skull. Valeria ignored him and smashed it. 4 men with white skull emblems burst in, attacking. Conan returned just in time, and together they dispatched the attackers. Tecotl led them to Tecutli, his clan's stronghold. In Tecutli, they met Prince Olmec, who welcomed them as heroes, though his consort, Tessella, eyed Valeria with suspicion. 5 nails hammered into the wall marked the enemies they had slain. During a feast, Conan recounted killing the dragon. The Tecutlians were stunned, believing the creatures immortal. Their ancestors, trapped in the city by the dragons, had overthrown the decadent rulers with the help of Tolkemec, a slave. The city's factions split over a woman, Tessella, leading to centuries of bloody feuding. Now, the Tecutli and the Xotalankas were locked in a deadly stalemate. Olmec offered treasure and safe passage if Conan and Valeria helped destroy the Xotalankas. Tessella objected, but Olmec insisted. Tecotl confided in Conan that Tessella was the same woman from 50 years ago, her youth preserved by dark magic. He said no more. Valeria was given a private room to rest in. Yasala, Tessella's maid, snuck in with a black lotus flower to drug her. Valeria captured her and demanded answers, but Yasala escaped into the catacombs. Valeria hesitated at the dark entrance but heard faint cries for help. She armed herself, intending to rouse Conan, when the sound of battle filled the halls. The Xotalankas had launched an attack using a magical pipe to drive Tecutli guards insane. The invaders surged in but were overwhelmed by Tecutli's superior numbers, aided by Conan and Valeria. Injured in the fight, Valeria rested while Conan investigated the Xotalanka's stronghold. He found the serpentine crawler he had wounded earlier, now dead. In its lair were dismembered bodies. Grief drove his companion Yanath to madness, and he attacked Conan, fatally wounding their ally Topal before Conan stopped him. Returning to Tecutli, Conan found Tecotl dying. The prince had taken Valeria, killing Tecotl when he intervened. Furious, Conan tracked them to Tessella's chamber. Olmec, tied to a rack, begged for help. He revealed that Tessella intended to drain Valeria's life force to maintain her youth. Conan forced Olmec to lead him to Valeria, but killed him when he tried to betray him. In the throne room, Tessella prepared her ritual. Valeria, held by her captors, watched helplessly. Tolkemec, now a ragged, vengeful figure, interrupted with a crimson wand that emitted deadly beams. As things went from bad to crazy, Valeria broke free, stabbing Tessella before the witch could complete her spell. The enemies lay dead, and Conan and Valeria, weary but alive, planned their escape from the cursed city. Together, they turned toward the coast, leaving behind the blood-soaked ruins. So now, let's explore Valeria from the 1982 movie. Valeria in the movies. In Conan the Barbarian, Valeria first appeared in Zamora, where she crossed paths with Conan and Subotai, and both of them were seeking Thulsa Doom. Together, they infiltrated the Tower of the Serpent to steal the Eye of the Serpent. The heist was successful and the trio escaped. That night, Valeria and Conan shared a moment of passion, their bond forged amidst danger and adventure. Oh, and just so you know, this whole arc where Valeria becomes Conan's serious love interest, this was taken from another Conan character called Belit from the Queen of the Black Coast storyline. Anyways, the next morning, the 3 of them, as in Conan, Subotai, and Valeria, are summoned before King Osric. Doom's men threatened the city, but Osric admired the group's skills. He offered them riches in exchange for rescuing his daughter, who had fallen under Thulsa Doom's spell. Valeria agreed to the mission, though her instincts warned her of the dangers. Later, she tried to convince Conan to abandon the quest, to take the riches they already had, and escape. She wanted freedom, not more bloodshed. When Valeria awoke the following morning, Conan was gone. He had left the Eye of the Serpent behind, a silent token of his decision to face Doom alone. Furious and worried, Valeria and Subotai tracked him down. They found him crucified on the Tree of Woe, left to die. Refusing to abandon him, they carried his broken body to the wizard Akiro, who saved Conan's life through dark sorcery. Reunited, Valeria accompanied Conan and Subotai to Thulsa Doom's Mountain of Power. The trio infiltrated the fortress and rescued the princess, but their escape was far from clean. As they fled, Doom struck from the mountainside. Using a serpent as a weapon, he shot an arrow at Valeria. The snake pierced her and she collapsed into Conan's arms. She died as he held her, her final moments igniting his fury and grief. Conan's thirst for vengeance deepened. Doom had taken everything from him, his parents, his childhood, and now even Valeria. Conan cremated her body, which sent her spirit to the afterlife. Yet, even in death, Valeria remained by his side. During a battle with Doom's warriors, her spirit intervened, saving Conan's life. Her courage and loyalty endured beyond the grave. In Conan the Destroyer, Conan prayed to Crom, begging for Valeria's return. His plea was interrupted by Taramis, who claimed she could bring Valeria back if Conan helped her. The promise tempted him, but it was a lie. Taramis had no intention of resurrecting Valeria. For Conan, her loss remained an unhealed wound, driving him forward in battle and vengeance. Valeria's legacy lived on in his quest for justice and retribution. Marvelous verdict. Valeria is a total badass. Robert E. Howard, in Red Nails, described Valeria as a ferocious and stunning woman who was the embodiment of strength and femininity. She's tall, full-bosomed, and large-limbed, with shoulders that suggest power. Her figure reflects unusual physical strength without diminishing her womanly allure. She exudes confidence and poise, her garments both practical and bold for a swordswoman. She wears wide-legged silk breeches that end above her knees, held by a silken sash. Soft leather boots rise to meet them, a low-necked silk shirt completes her attire, and her weapons, a straight sword and a long dirk, hang from her hips. Her unruly golden hair, cut at her shoulders, is held back by a crimson satin band. Valeria is more than her appearance. She's a master swordswoman, faster and more agile than Conan himself. Her skill and bravery rivals his, placing her as an equal in combat and spirit. She's independent and bold, challenging the constraints of her society with every step she takes. Yet, sometimes her femininity becomes her narrative focus, in the sense that that's all people notice about her, ignoring her skills and who she is as a person while highlighting the expectations placed on her. While Valeria is an undeniably powerful figure, Howard's writing sometimes subjects her to moments of sexualized vulnerability, using her as a device to provoke a response from readers. These moments underscore the tension between her agency and the societal structures that define her. If you asked us, we would define her as someone who's a symbol of defiance and strength. Her pursuit of freedom, though fraught with challenges, makes her one of Howard's most compelling characters. A woman who can fight, lead, and conquer, yet remains undeniably herself. Unfortunately, that's all we got for you this time, so we'll see you in the next one. But if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.